Our conversation for the next 20 or so minutes is going to be all about how you actually build your company into a billion-dollar company and be that successful. And there's a lot of stages in that process. And we have two people that have actually done that, and they're co-founders of the business as well. There isn't any Q&A during this session, but if you do have some questions, more than happy if you tweet them at me. I'll have a check and see if I can kind of weave them into the conversation if they match where we are. So my Twitter handle is mbancroft80, and then hashtag is RiseConf. So if you do want to, more than welcome, and I'll check my phone, and I'll try and integrate that into the conversation. So to get started, let's actually start with you, Amar. For your business, what was the need that you saw in that initial stage, in that beginning, when you guys got together and you went to market?
So before starting Cloudera, which happened 9 years ago, we started in 2008. I was working for Yahoo, and at Yahoo, I was responsible for how do we leverage our data to make the business smarter and better. And that led us to led me personally, but also my co-founders, to a number of key problems that exist in legacy systems with how they can extract value of data. It was a very clear problem that the systems were not scalable enough, they were not flexible enough in terms of types of data they can work with, and they were not powerful enough in terms of the machine learning and AI techniques they can apply. So that was a very clear gap, a very clear problem that needed a solution, which then became the genesis of the why. The why do we exist? And the why we exist, why Cloudera exists, is we truly believe that leveraging data properly will allow us to solve problems that are impossible to solve today.
And so, Aimone, and I'm going to apologize, I have the worst accent. I butcher everybody's name, so I apologize in advance. But in the beginning, when you guys were put together, it was a very different way of how your co-founders and the people that built the business were put together when you identified the need and then went to market and put the company together.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know if it worked. So when I was still at McKinsey, I got a call from Max, who's our CEO today, to build the business, and I was debating whether I should stay at McKinsey, have a consultant career, or move into private equity. And he suggested that there were probably not going to be any salaries there in the next couple of years, and so to go to actually a winning industry. And I think the vision in building Lazada was very ambitious from day one, right? So it wasn't set in a garage with a group of friends trying to test a minor gap. I think the big gap that was in the market was the lack of a solid e-commerce platform in Southeast Asia. But more importantly, there was the lack of a regional play across Southeast Asia. And I think at that time, individual countries in Southeast Asia were perceived probably subscale, right, for their size and also their infrastructure. And by really putting together a regional play, we were offering something new and very innovative to the e-commerce market, because most players usually start with an anchor market and then expand. And so we were brought together. The background was a lot of ex-consultants from McKinsey as well. And each one of us was given a part of the business in one of the countries to build that up, ground up, with the support of, our vision was always to have a regional infrastructure that was the brain and the control tower and the strategy, with the execution arm and the closeness to the market really inside the local countries. And so we built, over time, a very tightly knit team that moved around and shared the knowledge across the region to be able to help bring all 5 markets at the same time with a pretty limited gap between them in terms of growth.
Okay, so when you guys initially started the businesses, there are certain challenges when starting any business. So how do you balance that with the challenges in starting any business and always keeping your eye on long-term value, that growth, that where you want to get to? So, it must be tough because, there's so many things that can go wrong that you just aren't aware of.
It is tough, and it goes back to the question you just asked us right now. The key challenge at the beginning of any startup is truly identifying the problem they are going to solve, and not inventing a problem that nobody needs a solution for. So a very famous quote that I really like from Henry Ford. Henry Ford, he frequently gets credit for inventing the car. He did not invent the car. He invented the pipeline for building cars efficiently. And he said, if I had asked people what they wanted, meaning the solution, they would have said, we want faster horses, which obviously can't make faster horses.
Right.
But if I properly ask them, and that's what every entrepreneur should do at the beginning of their journey, what's your problem? And they get the same answer over again, that this problem is a true problem that exists for many people, not just for me, then that clearly is the beginning of something special. And then the challenge now is coming up with a solution for that problem in a repeatable way, which is, again, very, very hard. It's easier said than done. But that's at the beginning stages of any startup. The first phase is that phase of discovery. What is the problem? What is the solution? The second phase is the market fit. Do I have a solution that I can sell over and over again in a repeatable way? And then the third phase, which is the phase we're in right now, is the scaling phase. Can I take now this solution, which I proved works, and just scale it globally everywhere, which is more about execution than anything else.
But then that begs the question then, how do you actually know when it's the right time to scale and focus your attention in on reallocating your cash flows and looking at other markets? I mean, when is the right time?
So, I mean, I don't think there's any, or at least I haven't found any particularly scientific or replicable way of doing it. But what we saw is that typically growth tended to work in steps more than kind of a straight line. And these steps are usually when you unlocked a new idea or were able to pivot on your old idea, right? So, we typically started by being a retailer, because we thought that was the right way of approaching it, and then shifted to a marketplace model and did that very rapidly and saw exponential growth from that, right? Then we shifted again and we opened up our cross-border business for international brands and sellers to sell into Southeast Asia. And as you build that solution, and it's messy as hell. Our first experience with the vision of building a regional e-commerce player was interns going to Tesco to buy diapers and sharing emails across the region of how many you can fit in different taxis or tuk-tuks to be able to deliver it to a haphazard sort house to be able to deliver it. So I think it's the confidence of the manager of how stable his operations are once he's identified something new to be able to really unlock that. And I think there's a bit of gut feeling in there.
I will add to that so first, we are a data-based company. We create a product that allows us to leverage data allows our customers to leverage data to solve very hard problems. And by turn, we are a very data-intensive company ourselves. So our answer to the question, when do we scale, is a very straightforward answer. It comes from the data. When we achieve repeatability, meaning we have an offering in a certain geography, in a certain region, that we know we can sell over and over again, and we know what's the cost of selling, how many salespeople we need, how many support engineers we need beside them, how much marketing we need. It becomes a spreadsheet exercise, really, more than anything else. We know that if you go in, spend this much, within 9 months, 12 months, we expect this much to come back, and it just becomes a machinery from there on.
But so I'm interested then, what are some of the challenges in scaling up? Because I know previously with your other business and your roles at Yahoo, sometimes data that's valuable might have to actually be deleted and sent away. So again, how do you maintain growth and scaling and allocations of budgets at the same time and being realistic across all of your business?
I'll go first if you don't mind, and then you can jump on. The biggest issue with scaling, each one of these phases first is hard in its own right? The discovery phase, proving what the problem is, what the solution is. The market fit phase, I have something that really works, and the scale phase, each have their own challenges, and we've went through all of them. But the scaling phase, the biggest challenge during the scaling phase, bar none, is how do you hire people fast enough in different geographies while retaining your bar of the quality of people that you have in your company and retaining the culture and the execution discipline and the focus. That's the hard part, which is easier.
But that's always along the way, even after you've scaled. From a culture perspective, you have to maintain that at every level.
Yeah, but it explodes. Right. So at the beginning, you have 10 people, 50 people, 100 people. You can totally maintain culture. You just bring them together every month and
hope for the best.
Yes, but when you now have offices in 29 countries and each office has its own subculture and its own leaders, it becomes a much harder problem that deserves its own attention. Like I would say 50% of my time, the CEO's most time. The key leaders, my co-founder, goes into that. The focus on our mission, what we're working towards, what our key goals and objectives are, and what our culture is. And making sure our hiring mechanisms, our scaling mechanisms are all reinforcing that as much as we can.
I mean, for us, obviously we're in 6 markets today, and we're all moving at a rapid pace, each facing their own challenges in the market, as well as overall macro opportunities and threats. And I think one of the great strengths that we were able to build is really to have people take on new roles and move in different geographies with a very multinational, multicultural team. So, say if our team in Thailand was really the leader in a certain category or in a certain product, we would actually, over time, have that team either visit or actually part of that team move to other markets that were maybe slightly lagging behind on that particular area. And there you were able to keep, I mean, it's never perfect, but you were able to keep the pace of the wolf pack moving at the same pace, as opposed to having laggards and then having one pocket that's completely missing the talent or the cultural link, like you see in a lot of international expansion strategies that are happening today with some of the other players, right? Where some parts of the business is just completely detached from the mothership. And
I'm curious, is it growth at any cost? Because obviously you have to consider where your capital is coming from, the investments. At the same time, I mean, if you're the co-founder and you've been there from day one, I mean, you have your own interests and investment and views of the company. So, is it growth at any cost?
No, it's never growth at any cost. I mean, you would be foolish to grow at any cost. You need to grow within...
Is that why people, not as many, are successful and don't stand the test of time?
Yeah, I would say companies that try to grow at any cost without any regard to their efficiency, to their cost structure, to how they will achieve profitability and when, and having the clear formulas that show how you'll achieve that, will fail. I have no doubts about that. So it's not growth at any cost. But at the same time, if you identify the clear opportunity, and seriously, you simply have the spreadsheet that shows I invest this in this region, in this new country, in this new geography, 2 years from now I'll get this return, it behooves you now, it becomes a land grab, and it behooves you not to raise capital to be able to expand as fast as you can before the other big players or other competitors beat you into that market. So I wouldn't say it's growth at any cost, but at the same time I would say don't be overly foolish, meaning penny wise and dollar foolish, and just to say, oh, I want to retain all of my equity, I don't want to sell any of my shares, and then let another player raise lots of money and beat you to own the whole space.
I think we see we're a growth company, so growth is really at the core of what we do, and scale is really what matters. But we also see a lot of players coming in the market and just behaving in the most foolish way. Yeah, and I think we've gone through these cycles, sometimes not knowingly, and in the end, an unhealthy business has a short lifespan. And in every business there are hacks that over time are not sustainable. If you're a high-risk player, then you tend to go for these and then hope that you fix a little bit later down the road, but then you're playing a pretty dangerous game.
Yep.
Well, clearly, I mean, if you're not growing in a company that's a couple of years old on a month-by-month basis, I mean, you should ask yourself whether you're in the right industry or segment, right?
That's time to pivot.
or leave.
Now, so I'm interested, though, because now, more than ever, we are operating in a global competitive space. So, I mean, what are the challenges? Because when you do grow, they're into new markets, and they have their own sets of challenges, even though you may be offering the same product. So what are those challenges every time you look at, should we go into this market, or if we're in the market, I'm assuming that doesn't stay the same way when you first entered.
So I'll go first, and you can follow on. I mean, the challenges are a function of your business. Enterprise software, which is what we do, is very different than retail. So for us, the challenge whenever we enter a new market is how do we sell in the way that market is used to. And sometimes that is very similar to the United States, where we simply just hire sales reps and they know how to do it. In other countries, no. We have to have a local partner who truly understands how the government works, who truly understands how the local companies like to buy, and we only can sell through that partner. So you always have that learning exercise about what is the right mode of operation within that country. That said, it's really not that hard to figure out.
I think for us, the key objective, I don't know if I'd qualify as a retail or tech company. I think what we're building is an infrastructure for e-commerce in Southeast Asia. And so for us, in every country we go to, we really look at how we can build or leverage the right infrastructure that's there, right? So our logistics footprint, we know that that is key, right? So we have built not only Lex, which is our real logistics last mile delivery company, but also we have Lel, which is our control tower who really orchestrates all the different flows in logistics in every market. It changes by market, but we know we need it because logistics is the core of how we're going to deliver parcels to consumers.
So you look at the quality and capacity of the local market's infrastructure. So again, that's also, I mean, that gets in, especially in both your businesses because they're so heavily reliant, the government incentives and those local markets. So, I mean, how vastly different are they in the markets that you are? And also long term, I mean, we're looking at 5G and we're looking at infrastructure that some countries aren't even prepared for yet.
So incentives help in certain ways, but I mean, so some countries, for example, have incentives where if you were to hire engineers in that country, they will help pay part of their salary of the engineers, and that helps. But it's usually not the primary metric that we go by. The primary metric that we go by, if we are going to open a new engineering office in some location, is are we going to even find the talent in that place at and have it accessible to us at the first place? That's going to be the key metric that we will be looking at. Incentives will come after that, not ahead of that. Now, obviously, if a certain country has existing infrastructure that fits very well with what we're trying to sell from a technology perspective, a telecommunication perspective, then that's only a plus, a very strong plus, but it's not a requirement also as well.
I mean, we will invest differently in markets depending on the infrastructure gaps because we know what we need, and so we'll fill it. I think governments, especially in Southeast Asia, are quite new to the world of e-commerce. I think there's a lot of complexity today that they're addressing, both with domestic e-commerce, payments and logistics and the retail aspect, but also cross-border and how that's impacting the whole consumer and supplier landscape. And to be fair, we're working very closely with them to help them understand our needs and how this is really helping the local economy thrive.
So both your companies are past the billion-dollar valuations a couple of times. You identified the need, you went to market, you're international, you found the right talent, you have the infrastructure, you have the cash flows. What are the challenges now, because you're not a startup and you're not at the other end of the scale? So, I mean, does that change your growth strategy from here on? Does it change the way you still attack, the way you do business?
I mean, just this year at Lazada, we were able to launch our digital platform for digital goods, launch our loyalty program in Singapore called Live Up, which is pretty unique in that we're able to bring together Netflix, Uber Eats in one package like nowhere else. And we were able to launch the Taobao site translated into English onto our local marketplaces. So a marketplace within a marketplace. Now these are three sort of enormous projects with small, nimble teams that were assembled very quickly in the matter of a couple of weeks with existing talent reshuffling around. And I think that's the sign of us being, very nimble, try, learn, move on if we have to.
Even at this scale and
even
at this level.
Absolutely.
And to be honest, I mean, I've had the opportunity since the transaction with Alibaba to spend some time in Hangzhou in the campus, and it's incredible to see how now the 10th largest company in the world still behaves like that. I mean, they're assembling teams, projects are happening, projects are being closed down and started again at very high speed. People are very excited. They have a very entrepreneurial spirit. They set themselves ambitious visions for each of the projects like real entrepreneurs, and I think that's something we have to keep if we're to continue. Absolutely.
I completely agree. So first, I mean, you mentioned that we crossed a couple of $1 billion in valuation.
I say a couple, but I mean, it's more than that.
Yeah. I mean, roughly a couple.
What's a billion or
But
two?
what's in front of us is way bigger than what's behind of us, and that's what keeps us going. Like, so IDC estimates the market we're in a couple of years from now, in 2020, is going to be a $200 billion market. So the opportunity in front of us and the amount of growth that we can see in front of us far eclipses what is behind of us. So in many ways, with respect to the new opportunity, we are a startup, right? So yes, we identify all these things and we have the phase we're in right now, but the work in front of us and the value creation in front of us is an order of magnitude, if not 2 orders of magnitude, bigger than what's behind us. And for any startup to succeed, for any company to succeed, there is 3 things that they need to do very well. The first one is to have a very, very clear purpose, a very clear mission that they're all fighting for and they all believe in. Like with every atom in their body believe in. And
that's
so
every person in the company?
Every person in the company.
From the top down and the bottom up?
Yes, and what I do when I'm traveling across the world, whenever I meet a new employee, I ask them, what's the mission, the purpose that we're fighting for? And they have to say, we believe data will make what is impossible today possible tomorrow. If they don't say it, then I go back to the manager of that team and I say, what the heck is going on?
Right.
Right? So a very clear purpose and mission, number 1. Everybody has to know exactly what we're after. Number 2, a very healthy culture that we all align around and that we continuously optimize towards and avoid having subculture or culture that is counter to the core culture evolve. And so for example, at Cloudera, we have a very humble culture. We don't like what we refer to as disruptive cowboys, meaning people think, oh, I'm the smartest guy in the world, and this company will succeed or fail because of me. No, it's because of us all working together. So if anybody starts developing a culture like that within the company, very quickly we try to correct that. So that's just one example.
Yep.
And then third, having very clear objectives and goals with metrics that you measure on a monthly, quarterly, and yearly basis that can change. You want it to be agile, but you have to be measuring stuff. If you're not measuring stuff, you're not going to be able to accomplish anything.
And this is very unfair. So literally 45 seconds each, how is artificial intelligence going to impact your business and your growth strategy moving forward? Go.
Yeah. So we've got probably some of our data science team here in the crowd. I mean, for us, this is really one of the core pillars of the infrastructure we're trying to build. And we use our data capabilities both to automate internal processes and really gain the efficiency we're needing, but more importantly, to really enable sellers and consumers. So particularly on the seller side, we are really opening up the platform to give access also to third parties to the data that we have, in obviously anonymized, aggregated ways, for them to build services for these SMEs to go from the small offline shop into the 1,000 of orders a day online business, but also to big brands to be able to understand the consumer patterns and target consumers better. And I think this is really at the core of how we are thinking of the business and how it's evolving over time.
Yeah, so for us, I'm biased, obviously. I'm one of the founders of Cloudera. We think we have the best modern platform for doing machine learning, AI, and advanced analytics. And we truly think that this wave we're in right now, which I prefer referring to as the automation of decision making, as opposed to AI, because it's not really about intelligence, it's how do we automate decisions, how humans take the decision to drive a car, to diagnose a patient, to resolve a legal document, etc. How do we learn that and automate that in a way that will completely change the future?
So we are done, but 30 seconds really quickly. There is a question. How many times does the spreadsheet show that it won't work and lead to abandoning the area? So you were saying that there's the metrics and you have to be checking in. So when do you know when it's time to cut the cord?
I mean, it happens all the time, yeah. I mean, there will be a region we will go in and we'll do the math, and the economics just don't work out. How much we sell the software for, how much we have to pay the channel partners or pay the sales reps, and we do the spreadsheet, and either the market is not ready for us right now, it's not growing at the rate that we expect, or it's not a good fit. And we'll say, we'll stop investment in that region, or stop investment in that product line and come back to it later. It happens all the time.
Do you have anything to add?
Well, it happens all the time, but sometimes the spreadsheet might say one thing, but your market environment leads you to do something else, right?
So there are other questions, so you guys can chase them on social. They don't mind at all, and I'm sure they'll respond. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of day 2. Please thank our panelists today as well.